Do women need men?
No!
Jesus Christ.
No. Of course not. No. Fuck no.
No.
Why? Can't live with them, can't live without them.
We do not need them. Not at all.
No. We the prize.
A little bit, but not really.
We want them, but don't need them, baby.
Hell no.
Hell no.
Hell no. Hell fuck ass no. Hell fuck ass no.
Jesus Christ.
We the new niggas.
We are the men these days, though. We are the men.
What? Do men need women?
Yes, yes we do. We do. We need women in all facets, okay? Physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Romance is not real. But wait. Let me say it better before y'all eat me up and tell me how this one time 10 years ago a man bought you flowers. The concept of romance as we know it today is another tool of patriarchy. Romance is what has allowed common men to have access to women's sexuality and fertility. Because if it were not for romance and love, women would still be going after the best and the brightest and would leave most men out of their dating pool. And do you want to know the perfect place to observe this? Go watch a few episodes of Cheaters, because I guarantee that you will see a pattern. The woman who lives with the cheater always complains about how he doesn't do these nice things that he's doing for the other woman anymore. He doesn't buy her flowers anymore. He doesn't buy her gifts anymore. He doesn't even say kind words to her anymore. You want to know why? Because he already used his romance tool on you and it already worked. He already got you. He already has access to your fertility and access to sex with you. He doesn't have to romance you anymore because he already got what he wanted. Romance is a tool of patriarchy that allows common, ordinary men access to our reproduction and our sexuality.
Okay, let's go.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, this is the Black Eye Podcast and I am your host, Michelle. It's been a minute since we talked. You know, it's always a minute since things that I wanted to share with you today. An article written by Psychology Today. If you don't know who Psychology Today is, they are a magazine, a publication, which I think was last year, published an article about the lonely men epidemic. You know, that article that drove Red Pill into conniptions? Yeah, that article. This year, they're talking about how lonely men really crave romance and how women really don't. And so I wanted to get into this really quickly because there's some other things I'd like to get to. But I found it very interesting. It brought me back to an article that I read, I think earlier this year, where the author said that romance novels were written for men. And the reason why they were written for men is because if you had rich men who could have as many women as they wanted, or a king like David or Solomon who could have thousands of wives and thousands of concubines, what hope did men have that women wouldn't go to the richer man? And so romance novels, the first one ever written, Pamela, was about this great moral woman who eschewed the riches of the wealthy landowner to be with the poor man, you know, or Beauty and the Beast, where, you know, she turns this beastly man into a prince, but by her love and all that nonsense. Because really it was for men. It was to give men hope that they too could find love, even though, you know, in reality, not so much. Anyways, I wanted to, let me see, share this screen here, talk about this because I thought this was a very interesting article. Lonely single men want romance and lonely single women don't. And I have been watching a lot of content creators who kind of paint this picture that women are very desperate for men. And although I see some people who are desperate for men, on the whole, I do not see a lot of women clankering and going about their business trying to get with men. In fact, I see the opposite. Now, a woman may want a man, but she doesn't need a man. And those attitudes between wanting and needing are two different attitudes indeed. Certainly, one does not display desperation the way it's been painted on social media. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this article. Uh, what is it? Lonely single men want romance, lonely single women don't. And it's the assumption that everyone wants love. And it goes on to read this: single people who are or lonely want to go on dates and start romantic relationships, right? For lonely single men, that's true. But for lonely single women, not so much. In fact, among single women who had previously been married, more than 70% of the loneliest of them were not very interested in romance. Oh no. Once you've been married and you've gone through that relationship and you've endured that relationship and that relationship is over, you're glad to have your peace. Believe me. You are glad to have your peace. You understand that the rose, what is it? The blush is off the rose. You're not you're not infatuated with the idea of couple goals and all that nonsense. You realize you probably were sold a bill of goods, and maybe you don't regret the children and things that happen, but to go back into being in a relationship, that's a very stressful situation, especially for women. And it said here, those were some of the striking findings reported in Is Everyone Looking for Love by Yale sociologist Hannah Tesler, Mira Choi, and Grace Cow. And they were saying how the article was published in 2024. The assumption that just about everyone is looking for romantic love is so pervasive and until recently so rarely challenged that it strikes some people as a truism about human nature. That's just what it's like to be an adult. It is normal and natural to want to be in a romantic relationship, only it isn't. And we know that it isn't because, well, I could talk about history all day long, but um, I will talk about that in a little bit. In 2019, the Pew Research Center found that among a national U.S. sample of solo single people, not married, not cohabitating, and not in a committed romantic relationship, half were not interested in a romantic relationship or even a date. When they conducted a similar survey in 2022, the percentage had increased a bit. 56% were just not interested. I think too, it's a lot of noise on social media regarding romance, the type of people that you date. There's an oversaturation, which is like, cancels each other out. But I believe in this oversaturation of um, people who analyze people, being analytical, having discernment, um, you know, to the point where you can actually just cancel out. It's not worth it to go out on dates, especially in light of people's horror stories. If you watch TikTok long enough and you just sit here and watch people's horror stories, you will lose your mind. No, you don't want to date. No, you're not interested in romance. I mean, just watching 2 or 3 of those videos and you don't wanna be involved with any other human being at all. So, that number, 51%, came from averaging across of all solo single people in the study. It mattered, though, whether they were men or women, and whether they had always been single, never married, or had been previously married. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little interesting. It says, among the previously married, a remarkable 73% of women were not interested in romance. Among the previously married men, that number was 50%. Wow. Just wow. And we know this because men tend to, after a divorce, move on quickly, get a girlfriend, get somebody moving. They're more likely to remarry than women because women actually choose not to remarry. They may cohabitate. They may find somebody that they may be intrigued by or interested in, but they're not interested in getting back into the marriage thing. And even among the older crowd, a lot of women are, warning against having a guy move in with them. Like if you have your home and you have your stability and you have your peace, preserve that. You know, I hate to use the 4F analogy, find them, feel them, fuck them, and forget them, but pretty much that is, the prevailing thought process. Like, do not get yourself involved with these men. A lot of the times we don't even know who we're talking to. So we really don't want to get involved with them. We really, 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 really don't want to get involved. Among those who were never married, the women were again more likely to say they were uninterested in dating or romantic relationships than the men. But the difference was much smaller, 47% versus 44%. For both the never married and previously married women, the older solo singles were even less likely to be interested in romance than the younger ones. The patterns were less straightforward for men. No, men always need women. We know this. Men will always need women. Women will not always need men. Men, yeah, I mean, we want men, but we don't need men, right? The researchers did not have data available to explain their results. Typically, then previously married women expressed less interest in romantic relationships than men. And when it is shown that they were more likely to initiate divorce, what happens inside the marriage is posited as an explanation. For example, even as the division of household chores and caring for children has become more equal over time, women on average still do more than their share. Absolutely. It is incumbent upon women to do our share because we are the nurturers. We are the ones who have the estrogen. We are the ones who care. We are the ones who the children turn to for all those special little needs that dad doesn't provide. Also, a reality that if your husband is any kind of man at all, he's out working. He's out taking care of the family. So he won't be there to do the jobs or take care of the children in the same way that a mother would. Childcare in and of itself is so ridiculously expensive that it's prohibitive, cost prohibitive for the mother and the father to work if you guys are just working regular jobs. Half that money is not coming to the home. Half that money is going to daycare. And in some cases, many cases, daycare is as high as $1,000 a month, rivaling mortgages and rents. Childcare, daycare, right? Those kinds of explanations may well have some validity, but they assume that the women want to be single because of what they didn't like about being married. No, the bloom is off the rose. That's all. Marriage. Marriage for women is work. And we once we're free of it, like we like it, we enjoy it, we may even care about our partners, but once you're free of it and you have peace, you want to preserve that peace as much as possible. You don't realize how stressed out you are until you seek peace and you have it and you can do what you want, be what you want, uh, I remember my mom worked for this lady and her husband like passed away, and she totally redid her kitchen and redid her house, and she was so much happier. Like she got a makeover, and it was just the difference between being married to him and having his kids and doing the house and all that, and when he was gone, and it seemed like such a relief for her to just be free of the marriage. And I noticed that a lot as I was growing up. Like once the women were free, divorce, death, they would grieve or whatever, but they would go on and they would flourish after these men were gone. And I'm not saying that it was all the fault of the men, but I'm just saying I noticed that women did better when the men were out of their lives or when the marriage was ended by death or by divorce. Okay. So, what I have learned in my study of the single at heart is that many people, men, women, and people who identify as neither, the previously married as well as the lifelong single people, are attracted to the single life because they appreciate what it has to offer. Yes, they are not so much avoiding romance as embracing the freedom, the social connections, and the psychological richness of single life because they appreciate the solitude rather than being afraid of it. They are especially unlikely to feel lonely. And I think that's very much true for women than it is for men. I don't know if you were a watcher of my channel, but I did a a video regarding the lonely man, and it was about men who didn't even build they didn't nurture friendships. They didn't have any friends. So much so that they had to form groups amongst themselves to, build friendships, have a what do you call it? That was on the tip of my tongue and it just left. But to have an infrastructure of support, they genuinely don't have that. So a great deal of time, men will feel more lonely than women, whereas women will go out, find friendships, have an infrastructure, have family. You know, they're more egalitarian, more gregarious, more outgoing. Uh, they tend to be more generous in their time and their emotion, and so they will have friendships, social structures that men never bothered to build for themselves. Therefore, women wouldn't need men or need romance as much as men would because men are genuinely lacking in social infrastructure. Anyway, check that video out. I'll link it in the description. But among solo singles who have never been married, the loneliest among them do typically want romance. But again, that was mostly true for the single men. Among the previously married, too, the lonely single men were especially interested in dating and having a romantic relationship. Well, we see this. Men tend to seek out women because they need women. Again, no social structure, no friendships, no support system. So if they're brokenhearted, they tend to seek women for, to take care of all their needs, not even thinking about how to dissect the friendship or dissect the relationship or taking the time to heal from a broken heart. Their whole social structure is if, you broke up with somebody else, go get somebody else, go get another woman, and, sleep with her or sleep with a ton of women until you start to feel better about yourself. But that's not nurturing or fostering or taking care of oneself. That's just, community D, right? Tesla and her colleagues did not test any explanations for these differences, so we can only speculate. But maybe when women feel lonely, they are more motivated to reach out to friends and family than to a romantic partner. We just said that. They often have more experience at nurturing ties with friends and family than men do. Or maybe they have learned through experience that the promise of romantic relationships as a cure for loneliness is often a false one. God. Oh, God. That is so true. That being with a lonely person, I mean, being lonely and being with somebody just to be with them, you your best bet is to stay lonely. Honest to God. And it's not even that the person that you're with is a bad person or a narcissist or anything like that. But if you're not into them and you're trying to, sustain some kind of romance because you feel that you want to be uh having a piece of man is better than no man at all, I'm here to tell you that that is not true. You best keep your peace. Having someone that you do not care about, that you don't want to be with, that you have to swallow a lot of crow in order to be with, listen, I said this in a previous video. 7 years with the wrong person is a lot longer than some people think. And believe me, being with the wrong person will age you. It will cause you to be, cause you to get ill, cause you to get sick. I mean, it's not worth it. Preserve your peace. Go find something for yourself. Go to school. Take a course. Travel. Save your money. Have something fun and for yourself. And if you are right with yourself, I know we were talking about decentering men. I don't know how sustainable that is. Y'all have to deal with that stuff by yourself. But I'm just saying, you have to build yourself up so that you can be the right type of person. And that takes a lot of work. Sitting with oneself, dealing with oneself, faults and all, not just all the positive stuff. I'm great, I'm good, but dealing with some of the darker stuff and understanding that you have limits, you have faults, you have flaws, and working on healing those pains and sufferings and traumas before you can even be ready for any kind of romance. Some of us can't even sustain friendships. So I don't know how in God's name we talking about we want some romance because you can't even do the basics. And that means that sometimes you have to sit alone by yourself in the quiet and find out about yourself, who you are in its entirety. And that's not an easy task. But I guarantee you that once you do it, you'll come out far more insightful than you went in. Believe me when I tell you. Once you get to a level, and this is not hyperbole or nonsensical talk, but it really is a truth that once you get to a certain level, there are people that just don't talk to you. A lot of foolishness will drop off. They won't even call you. You'll be a little upset, but you'll be okay because all it means is that you're not easy and you're not vulnerable, and they just the troublemakers can't just come to your house because you have a standard. But that takes time and it takes work. And nobody on the internet can do that work for you but yourself. So the article goes on to say this: regardless of the explanations of their findings, what Tesler and her colleagues have documented is significant. In this research and some Tesler's other work, throwing data presumption that everyone is looking for romantic love and knocking it down, she is taking aim at something fundamental, what we assume to be normal and natural and universal desires among adults. I don't know. But she just said that men want romance more than women do. I was doing some research about Augustus Caesar and the Marriage Act. Like it's here somewhere in one of the tabs. And something similar, it was a similar discussion about marriage. Young men didn't want to marry, young women didn't want to marry of a certain class. They had money, they didn't have to marry. And Augustus Caesar made a law making it, forcing young men and young women to get married because they felt, the young men and the young women, that they had money. They had, they could have children. They don't have to get married to have children, and they could take their illegitimate children and they could legitimize them, and then the children can inherit the money or the estate or whatever. And Augustus Caesar noticed this, that nobody was trying to get married. So he made a law forcing men and women to be married, forcing them to get married, forcing them to have children, because women weren't trying to have kids like that, forcing them to have children, forcing them not to get divorced, enforcing the divorce law, because getting a divorce, it wasn't an option. If the male and the female, if the man and the wife caught one another cheating, it was incumbent upon them to report it to Rome. And it became a state issue in which the man who was caught cheating would lose his estate, and the woman also would lose, and they would both be exiled from Rome. They would lose their Roman citizenship and their money and their inheritance. They would lose just because they were cheating in the marriage. So it brings to light that marriage isn't a natural state for people unless there is a force or an enforcement of law or religion to cause people to marry. And one of the tools that is used to help women get married is romance. It is a tool because without romance, without the promise of love, without couple goals, people don't gravitate toward each other. Men like their freedom. Women love their freedom. Women love their peace. So it goes to show that human beings are not necessarily gravitating toward romance. That it has to be on some level a social structure. But they know that marriage stabilizes a civilization. So how do you do that? And like we said, religion, laws, society orders, romance. So this is really nothing new that men and women aren't looking for romance. That's my point. It's nothing new. It's been here before. And by the way, that marriage law, that lasted for 300 years. And then, interestingly enough, the Catholic Church adopted those very laws to perpetrate in one of the Christian tenets. What do they call it? The sacraments. Interesting, right? Anyways, tell me what you think about this study. Are women no longer looking for romance? Women, because I don't think women are anymore. And how do you feel about it? Let me know. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to put a like in there. Subscribe if you want to see more. And don't forget to join me on Patreon. Leave a comment down below. On Patreon, I got unboxings. I'm doing lots of things, lots of conversations that I can't have on YouTube because they're giving me a hard time. So come over there to Patreon, join for free, and we can have a ball, laugh, joke, play, all that good stuff, and talk about stuff that we can't talk about here on YouTube. Until next time, bye.